straightforward. Actually, what we're going to do today is the manipulation of databases. We are going to build a web-based project. We are going to use all the tools that the Visual Studio gives us to develop a web solution. We are going to use the same database we defined, let's say, in prior classes. Briefly and very quickly, I'm going to redesign it again because we're going to use it in a new project. So I'm going to redesign it again just for your follow-up. And later on, we are going to implement an interface that looks like the following. We are going to search by flight, and we get results. And we are going to search by pilot, we will get results. And also, we are going to use the planes themselves to get results. We are going to have a mixture of all. Later on, specifically, we are going to search a flight, and through the same flight, we are going to get the pilot of that flight. So we are having a flight to search, and the flight we are going to search, we have to have a way how to display the pilot in that flight, somehow like that. So let's do this one. Let's seek it. Let's start by designing the database, and later on we will proceed. So Visual Studio immediately. I'm gonna start a new web solution. C#, empty website. Keep the same location, but I'm going to change the name. I'm going to change the name. See what I'm changing here. Website 3. I'm changing it to flight system. Flight. So I did not modify anything. Just the name. The backslash I did not modify. Just the name I changed to the name. Just the name. Flight system. No space. No space. One word. Concatenated. Okay. I got the thing. Immediately, I'm gonna start by inserting a new database. So here, I'm gonna insert a new object, add a new object, and this object, it would be a database, SQL Server database. So I'm gonna search for SQL Server database. This is the one. I'm gonna give the same name, database. Okay, just add. He's saying that he's gonna generate a folder for that. I'm gonna say yes, do. Will come here. Yes, here it is, the folder, and inside of it, we have the database. In the Server Explorer, if I go on, I find my database here with an X, just refresh. Yes, has been activated. So inside of it, do we have any table? No, we don't have. I'm gonna generate the tables we have. So first table is, as per our request, is let's say pilot, the first one. This is the first entity. I'm gonna generate the pilot. So right click, add new table. On tables here on this table hide. So let's see the architecture, ID, first name, last name, title, and so on. So ID is there. I'm going to say first name, it's a varchar. Okay, last name, no space usually, somehow. It's also a varchar. Title, it's also a varchar. Okay. Birth date and pilot ID. Birth date and pilot ID. Okay, birth date. I'm going to use varchar to avoid the syntax, the lexical syntax actually of the dates. So I'm going to just use varchar. It's it serves us. And I'm going to say pilot ID. Pilot ID. Okay, it's an int. An ID, no, it's an int. So I'm going to update my database. I'm going to update my database from here. It will tell me to confirm. Yes, has been generated. So update the database. Here it is successfully done. And the green tick has been generated. So good. I close this entity. I close this entity. Plus, I come back here, refresh my tables. Here is the table. Actually, it's with the name table. So I had to change it actually. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna leave it for now like that. Later on, I'm gonna consider this table to be what to say. Actually, the definition here, it will give us the only the fields, but I'm going to generate second table here. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to generate the table pilots. Let's delete this table, pilots. Yes, here it is. And I'm going to update. Yes, update database. Updated here locally. Yes, that's good. I close, come back my database, refresh the tables. Yes, I have the second table pilots. I'm going to delete this table here. Delete the table. Yes, update database, done. Yes, great. I refresh the tables now again. Refresh. Yes, خلاص. I have only the pilots. I have only the pilots. Good. With the fields we generated earlier. Good. Let's create the second table. Let's say flights. The second one is the flights. I'm going to generate the flights. ID from to departure date. Right click on the tables. Add new table. ID. Yeah, okay. From I'm going to say varchar, the data type. Okay. Two. Also, it's a varchar departure date. Departure date. I'm going to say yes. It's a varchar also. I will not make any space between the names. It's a concatenated word. The departure date. Then after plain ID. Plain ID. Yeah, plain ID. Okay, it's an int here. It's an ID. Great. I'm going to change the name here now. Before I'm going to change the name here to. I'm going to change the name to flight. Flight or flights. Flights. It's with S. It's plural. I'm going to say flights. Yes. Here it is. Then update. Yes, updated the base. Done. Tick has been generated. Let me refresh my tables. Hive. Yes, flights has been generated here. I have two entities now. Okay, I'm going to close this entry. Wait, move to the next entity, which is this association table in between the pilots and the flights. Pilots on flights. Pilots on flights. Again, on table, right click, add new table. It holds the pilot ID, which is an int, and the flight's ID, the flight ID. Also, it's an int. Great. That's all I believe. Let me check. Flight's ID and pilot ID. That's it. Int. Great. That's it. I'm going to close. I'm going to update first of all. But here, pilots on flights. The name is pilots on flights. So I'm going to respect that. Pilots on flights. So I'm just writing concatenated words for the titles, more or less. No space. That's the most important. Update. Yes, update again. Yes, has been generated. Close this entry and check if it has been generated or not. For sure, yes. So refresh. Yes, pilots on flights. The fourth and the last, the planes entity. Model, build date, number of seats. Right click on the tables hive, add new table. So here it's an ID, great. So then after model, I want to say it's a varchar, build date. Again, to just escape the syntactical presentation of the date, I'm going to use varchar. And a number of seats, I'm going to say number of seats. Here is an int. I'm going to say it's an int because it's a number. So yes, and here planes. The name is planes. The name of this table is planes. Great. So has been generated. I'm going to update. Yes, updated. Great. So updated. Let me check. Close this one. Let me check here to refresh my int. Yes. I have 4 of them now. I have 4 of them. Okay, for the relationships, I'm not doing anything because we explained that last class. You have everything in your head, and you have the recording. You come back to that recording. Let's continue immediately. I'm going to populate each with one record. I'm going to populate each with one record immediately. I'm going to populate some data in. So I'll start with the flights. Let's say open table. No, show table data. Show table data. Okay, ID. I'm going to say 1. From, I'm going to say Muscat. 2. I'm going to say Dubai. Departure date, I'm going to say 14th, 14th 3 2021. Plane ID, I'm going to say 1, whatever. Okay, next line, I'm going to say ID number 2. From, I'm going to say Dubai to Muscat. Okay, it is 15 3 2021. Tomorrow means plane ID, I'm going to say number 1, the same plane. Okay, it's enough for this entity, I did not press any save. There is no save here because it automatically gets saved. Close. I'm going to pass to the second entity, pilots, table data. Pilot ID, I'm going to say 1. First name, I'm going to say Ali. Last name, I'm going to say Oman, whatever. Title, I'm going to say pilot. Birthday, I'm going to say 10, 10, 10, whatever. Come on. Pilot ID, I'm going to say 1. Great. Another one, let's put another one. So here I'm going to say Fatma. Last name, I'm going to say, yes, Fatma again. Pilot, I'm going to say pilot, yeah, position, I'm going to say pilot, whatever. Date of birth, I'm going to say 1/3/2010. Okay. Pilot ID, I'm going to say 2. Great. Okay, it's enough. Two records. I'm going to close. Automatically save it, yes, for sure. So pilots on flights. So I'm going to, these are an association table, actually. I do not have to put, but I'm going to say 1, 1. I'm going to say 1, 2. Pilot ID and pilot ID and things like that. So I'm going to say here, let's say 1. Because flights actually did not accept the number 2, we do not have to. The data in row 2 was not committed. Okay, I'm going to say, leave like that. So I'm going to say 2, 2. It's enough. Okay, great. So close. Fourth entity and last, planes. Actually, the numbers in the pilots on flights, it is constrained. It has to be actually inserted with respect to the referential integrity. Thus, we have to understand that and to explain that. Other than that, I just included values for our work today. So for the planes, plane number 1, model, I'm going to say Airbus. Build date, actually, or built date. I'm going to say new one, 14/3/2010. 2010. Okay, number of seats, I'm going to say 220. Let's input another one, 2. I'm going to say Boeing. Okay, build date is a little bit old, 10/10/2015, for example. 150 chairs, seats. Okay, it's enough. Let's pass. It's enough. Okay, I'm going to close this entity. Now I have actually inserted the values on all of them. Let's say the entities. Yes, all of them, they have data. Good. Let's pass to the next question. Now we are required to build actually a visual interface that looks like the following one: flight system that has 3 search positions, 3 search positions. We search by the flight ID, we search by the plane ID, and the pilot ID, both of them. Yes, we are going to use sessions to memorize the values, and we are going to use those sessions to help in achieving the goal. Later on, we'll practice a little bit on those things, and I give you the time to do and to finish. Okay, let's start by generating a such system, a such interface. Let's create a such similar interface. Come back. Okay, we have our database already. I'm gonna generate a main interface because later on we will be required to generate a login interface. So I'm gonna generate for now a main interface that looks like this one. Okay, so new item on the root folder, root entry, right click, add a new item. It's a C# based code behind. So, and web form interface, web form interface. Yes, it is web form. Change the name. I'm going to change the name to, I'm going to say home.aspx. I did not change the .aspx at the end. I did not change. I changed only the default to become home.aspx. Okay, add. Finished. Now design, the design window. Okay, in the design, I'm gonna just generate something similar. First of all, the title, then after those three search engines, then after a grid view. So let's start. So here, the first thing I'm gonna insert, I'm gonna write flight system. Okay, inside it is to be formatted, justify its center. Format still font. I'm gonna choose a bigger font. Here, color. I'm gonna choose different color. Yeah, okay, that's enough. Flight system, great. Here a little bit down. Here a little bit down. I'm gonna insert a table to subdivide interface into three groups. 1, 2, 3. That is made of one line. So table, insert table. It is one row. It is one row only. 3 fields. 1, 3. Okay. Just press OK. We had it. 1, 2, and 3. Good. The first one, I'm going to insert a label and a text box and a button. Label. The label, I'm going to say here, the text is flights or flight ID. Flight ID. Great. Then next of it, space, then text box. Here it is. Then next of it, space and a button. The button will have the name search. Search. What is written inside the button is search. So change the name to search. Great. So flight ID, text box, search button. The same thing I'm gonna do in the second column. So I'm gonna insert a label first of all. The label, I'm gonna change the text to plane or pilot ID. Pilot ID. Great. Then next of it, space and the text box. Here it is. Then next of it, space, then a button. Here it is. I'm going to change the text of this button to search again. Done. The same for the, here we did flight, pilot, and planes. The third field, I'm going to insert the same thing. A label first. The label text is planes or plane ID. Plane ID. Next of it, space and text box. So respect the steps because you have to be punctual and to generate the same format. Next of it, space, then a button to search. Yes. I'm going to change the text of this button to search. Done. Generate. I'm going to center all of the content of this table. I'm going to highlight, then center everything. Format, justify, center. Okay, great. We have everything centered. Okay, we are almost done. I'm going to save this work so far. I'm going to save, saved. Let me check again. Okay, the outcome, it is almost done. Still, we need only this grid view, and we have 2 blue fields aside. So we are going to use a table again for inserting such a diagram here. Left, middle, right. Let's do that. And the middle would hold actually the grid view we need. Let's do that. Actually, it has to give us actually a preview, which is the content of the grid view, which is either the flights or the planes or the pilots. We're going to search the flights, the values will come here. We're going to search the pilots, the value would come here. The planes, the value would come here. I'm going to do it the easy way first of all. Then after we are going to make it a little bit complex until we reach this answer here. I'm going to explain you all the activities I'm going to do step by step. So let's start by inserting a table made up of 3 columns, 1 record, 1 row. So here a little bit down, outside of the table, I'm going to insert, I'm going to go to the table, sorry, table, here, I said here, then table, come on, table, insert table, it is 1 row, 3 columns, Why? To expect to get the same output, 1, 2, and 3. So here it is 3 fields, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. For the first field, this one, I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to modify actually the style of this cell here. I'm going to search for the style here. From here, style 3 dots. And I'm going to do some modifications. So the table, I'm going to make the empty cells to be shown. Show everything, yeah, to make it be visible. Then the background, change the color of the background to whatever you like. I'm going to respect, so let it be blue here. And the same thing I'm going to do it for the last field, the last one also. I'm going to highlight, style, change the style to whatever you like. So I'm going to start by the empty, it is to be shown, empty, it is to be shown. And the background to be in blue. I'm going to change the background color to similar color. Okay, blue. Great. We had 2 cells, left, right, and they are in blue. Background in blue. The middle cell actually would be utilized to show the grid view we need. Which grid view? We have 4 grid views. Okay, let's start explaining the thing. I'm going to type the ID of the flight here. When I press search, the flight entity, which is the grid view of the flights, would be shown here, the flight with the same ID. The same way, I'm going to type the pilot ID. The flight has to be shown here. The plane ID search, then the plane details has to be shown here. So very easy. Let's start with the flight ID and let's dig in. So I need to have the flight grid view here in order to search in using this text box. So here in this text box, so in this table, let's say TD, let's say field, I'm gonna drag and drop the flight or the flight's entity. This is the one. Drag and leave it here inside. Here. Great. Okay. See, I'm gonna enable all the functionalities. Tick, enable them all. And the most important is the selection here. The most important is this selection. We have to enable this selection here. Why? Because the question is asking us when you select, we need the selection later on. So the selection has been activated. Select. It is there. One other note is that it is not centered. So I'm going to center all. Everything I highlighted. This table, the table here. See the table here. I clicked. Then format, justify, center. Clear. I got everything centered. Great. So almost, I'm going to say, it is a similar look to the one here. Great. Okay. What I'm going to do now, let's test first of all to see what does this look, what does this, let's say, view look like when we test. So right click in any empty space, view in browser, and yes, here it is. Showed actually two records because in this flights table we already inserted only two records, two flights from Muscat to Dubai and from Dubai to Muscat. When I select, nothing happens. Shows there is a movement here, but it does not do anything. Yeah, because we did not ask any command, any order. Okay, the first thing actually, we have flight ID here, number 1, and flight ID number 2. I'm going to search for number 1. So I'm going to type here 1 and search. Nothing happens. Search. Nothing happens. It loads a little bit and it does not do anything because we did not specify that we are going to search here. Let's do that here in this button now. When we click the button search, we have to get what we search for here, this one. What we search for here, we have to get it. Otherwise, no, nothing happens. Great, great. First of all, to do so, let me come back. I'm going to generate a session. To store the flight ID. I'm going to generate a session to store the flight ID. Which is we typed here. What we type here, we are going to store in a session. Let's do that. So, in this search button, double click, exactly 2 clicks, not more. Here, and here I'm going to create a session. Here it appears I select, yes, and in between I'm going to say flight ID. It's a name, user defined. But equals what? Equals what we typed here. What is here? It's the text box 1. Text box 1. Not text. So let me come back. Equals text box 1 dot text dot string. Read it as a string actually. Sorry, not this one. 2 1. Yes. Semicolon at the end. Done. We did it. So خلاص. What we did here, we stored the value of this text box into a session. Great. Let me test. Let me save all first. Let me save all. I saved this one and this one both. Let me test again now. What happened? Nothing. But at least we have to have a view without errors. I'm going to search for 1. Yes, no errors. I'm going to search for 2. Yes, happened without errors. But nothing is shown to me. Why? Because we did not use the session yet. Now let's use that session. So the session we have now is flight ID. I'm going to copy this value because I'm going to use where in displaying values here in this grid view. So I click one time on this grid view. I got this small arrow here. I click it. Then configure data source. We have only one data source. One is the same. Next, we get our entities. We have only one. This is actually we need this table specifically, the flights and all the fields. Work clause. Tick tick tick. They are all here. Work clause. We're going to display based on the ID. We're going to search based on the ID here. So the ID that has to be equal to the session. Which session? What we copied earlier. I'm going to paste here the flight ID. I'm going to add it now. Here it is. So the ID has to be equal to the session. I'm going to say OK. Next, test the query. Yes, the values they are actually with this data type. It has to show the fields. Yes. OK. Finish. Fields without values. Yeah, because it's a session. We have to give a value for the session to show us. I'm going to save and test now. Right click, view in browser. Okay, nothing is shown. See here, nothing is shown now. There is no value. Earlier it used to show 2 records. Now nothing. I'm going to search for 1. Search. Here is the number 1. Perfect. I'm going to search for 2. Here is number 2. Yes, Dubai to Muscat. One is from Muscat to Dubai. I'm going to search for 3, for example. We don't have any 3. Nothing is there. I'm going to search for 10. Don't have 10. Nothing is there. I'm going to search for 1 now. Yes, 1, here it is. So it works very fine. Wonderful. We did it so far. We did it. This is great. Now we did so far. Now we use this button as an event handler. When we click this search button, what we type it here, if I'm not going to type any value here. I'm going to search. Nothing to give. There is no error, but no values. You have to give a correct value, and it has to be available to show your result. I'm going to search for, see, I'm going to search for 1, for example. Okay, happened. So in this flight, when I click select, the pilot, flight, the plane ID. Okay, I'm gonna just go here. I'm gonna let's use the plane ID. When I click the select, the plane ID, this one has to be written here. What does it mean? Means we search for a flight number 2. Here is the number 2. It is from Dubai to Muscat. When I select it from here, the plane ID, which is this number, has to be written here. Later on, we're going to use it to search for the details of the plane. So let's activate this select now. When I click the select, the plane ID has to be shown here. The plane is the field number 5. Field number 1 is the ID. Field number 2 is the from. Field number 3 is the to. Field number 4 is the departure date. Field number 5 is the plane ID. Why I'm telling you that? Because let's close and come back. Because according to the guide, we have actually a guide at the end. We're going to read the values based on the position. We're going to read the values based on the positions. We're going to read the content of the grid view. And specifically, we need a specific value, the position number 5. What position number 5? What is the position number 5? Which is this plane ID here, the plane ID. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When I click the select, when I select whatever I want, the value of position 5 has to be written here. Very easy. So we just obey to that. And position number 5 has to be written in the text box we want. In our case, we are not going to use text box 1 because we haven't actually the thing in text box 3. We're going to select and write text box 3. Let's do that. What I'm going to do here, the event handler is the grid view. So the event handler, to click the select is something inside the grid view. So the event handler is the grid view. So double click in this grid view here, 2 clicks, exactly 2 clicks. It is grid view 1, this one. The name is grid view 1. This text box here is text box 3. So on this grid view, 2 clicks. Done. And in here, I'm going to declare actually a variable. This variable, it has to be actually from grid view because I'm going to read the selected value from the grid view number 1. So I'm going to see grid view, here it is number 1 dot selected. I'm going to say index. Yes, I can use the index. Can I use something different actually? Selected row, because selected index will give us actually just one value. Now I'm going to use selected row. Here it is. Okay, that's it. This value, I'm going to store it in a variable. Let's say flight. Let's say flight equals, yeah, because we need the flight or flight ID. I'm going to say flight. Flight. Okay. I'm going to store. And this flight is from the same type. It has to be from the same type. Actually, it has to be declared. I'm gonna here just declare that as a grid view, because it has to be actually declared that this is to be receiving a value from the same category. I'm gonna say here grid view, grid. Let me just gain space first of all to choose it, to respect the space. Yes, grid view. I'm gonna say grid view pro. Yes, here it is. I choose it. Grid view variable user defined. And now I'm going to use this flight here to reach the position number 5. To reach the position number 5 here, the plane ID. So actually the plane ID is the colon, the field number 5. How to do? New line, come back. New line. Flight, which is the same variable, the same one here. I'm going to type. Here it is, flight dot cell. Yeah, I have to store it first of all. Actually, I have to store it somewhere. Means text box. Yes, so I have to use the text box here as a holder. So the text box is number 5. Yeah, I'm gonna say cell. I'm gonna say cells position 5. I need a text. Great, that's it. I'm gonna store this value. I'm gonna store this value where? In text box 3. Text box 3 dot text equal. Why I'm using text box 3? Because this one name is text box 3. Here it is, text box 3. So semicolon at the end. Done. Finished. I'm done. Very easy. So that's it. Just I'm gonna test now. I'm gonna test. I'm gonna save. First of all, save all. Save this one and also save this one. In any empty place. View in browser. So I'm gonna search, for example, for flight number 1. Here it is, Moscow to Dubai. I'm gonna select this flight. When I select, the number 1 has been written here. I'm gonna select number 2, flight number 2. Here is the number 2. The plane ID is still the same. It's the same plane. Select, still number 1. I'm gonna delete this one. Okay. Now I'm gonna search for 2 again. I'm gonna select here. It has been appeared here. So it works very fine. We did it. We succeeded in doing that. So yeah, very successful. So far we search flight, we get the flight details. And from the flight details we select, we get the plane details. Now when we search the plane here with the ID, we will get the plane ID. Let me close. The plane ID. And the plane ID we are going to use to get the pilot ID. No more, no less. Okay. Yeah, great. So let's do that. Here to do so, I'm gonna come back here down, new line, down. See where I clicked. I clicked one time here, only one time, and enter just to gain space. And I'm gonna drag and drop the plane entity. The plane entity is the one. I'm gonna drag it here. Leave it. It will come. Yes, here it came. I'm gonna enable all the functionalities. And more important is this selection, the selection function. Good. I'm going to save all. Yes, great, done. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do. And the session value will be used to search the values here. Let's do that. So immediately, double click. I'm going to create a session. Session name is flight ID. Flight ID, yes. But equals what? Equals text box 3 dot text. Text 1. Text box 3 dot text dot to string. Dot. There's a problem here. Let's see. Text box 3 is saying text box. There is not 3 here. There is not 3 here. It's this. There is not 3. Great. Done. We generated the session. We are going to use the same session here, which is this one. The same session. I'm going to copy. To search what? To search the flights here. What we are getting here. We're going to search here. From this selected ones, from this small arrow, the same way, same that we did with the flights. So here we have only one connection string. So the flights, we're going to search the flights. The entity here is the flights. So that is the planes. The entity is the planes, not the flights. Am I mistaken or what? Yeah, we are searching the planes. We are searching the planes here. So this entity is for the planes only. So configure data source. Next, the planes, it's the same planes, yes. So where clause, we're going to search by ID that has to be equal to the session. Which session? Which we just copied. I'm going to paste here. Flight ID. It's not actually, I'm going to change the name to make it coherent. I'm going to come back here. It's not flight ID. I'm going to change it to plane ID. Okay, great. I'm going to copy now. Save this page. Come back here. This plane grid view. Next here. Configure. Next planes. Where clause. By ID. That has to be equal to the session, and the session has to be equal to the plane ID. I'm going to add. Here it is. Here it is. Done. I'm going to confirm. Next. Test the query. Yes, the values. Okay. The template. The fields. Yes, here they are. Finish. Empty because we need to have a session value, otherwise they would be empty. Wait, so I'm going to save this interface in any empty place. Right click, view in browser. Yeah, great. So I'm going to search. I have the two fields here, the two grid view, but they are empty. Why? Because we have to search. I'm going to search for the flight number 1. Here's the data. I'm going to select. Here is the one has been generated here. Which one? This is the one. I'm going to search this plane now. Select, and here's the data. Airbus. Perfect. If I'm going to search, for example, I'm going to change it manually to 2. And I'm going to search Boeing. If I'm going to search for 3, we have 3. We don't have 3. Search, nothing. I'm going to search for number 100. Search, nothing. We don't have anything. I'm going to search for this one again. Here, I'm going to select, change it to 1, search. Yes, here is the data, Airbus. So we are succeeding. We are doing something actually good. We are actually approaching the end. So great, so great. Very great here. So to make the thing actually more successful, I'm gonna insert a grid view which shows the pilot and the flights. The pilots on flights. So remember the entity, this one, pilots on flights. When we search for flights, I'm gonna also display a grid view that shows the pilots on flights. The pilots on flights. To do so, new space here, a little bit space down, and here I'm going to drag and drop the pilots on flights. Here they are. Yes, and then I'm gonna enable all the functionalities. Most important, the selection. Here it is. Yeah, confirm that. That's it. Great. So this one will be having values to be displayed to us if we search by flight. The same we used to search for flights. We're going to search for the pilots on flights also. So I come back here. The same session we generated here, the same session here, the same session we generated here, the same, I said flight ID. We're going to use to search the pilots on flights here, like we search for the flights here. So on these pilots on flights, this arrow, configuration arrow, configure the data source. Next, the entity is pilots on flights, where clause. We are going to search by the flight ID that has to be equal to a session which we just copied. The flight ID here has to be equal to the flight ID session. Add, here it is, confirm. That's it. Next, test our query. Yes, the objects data types. Let's see the template bodies, architecture. Yes, those are 2 fields only. Yeah, finish. Save all. After saving all, I'm going to test simply, before I move. Let's test very quickly. I'm going to search, for example, for number 1. Here it is. Yes, we have 2. This is the 1, and this is the 1. Yeah, pilots on flights. Now, when I select these pilots on flights, when I click when I click the select, I'm going to search for number 2 here, for example. Pilot number 2. Dubai to Muscat, we have pilot 2 on flight number 2. This is the flight number 2 here, the number 2. This is it. And now the pilot number 2, when I select here, this pilot number 2 ID has to be written here, which we are going to search later on. Let's do that. To do so, the same way, I'm going to close, the same way when we selected the flight ID here, we're going to select the pilot ID here, which is in position number 1. Position number 1, not number 5. Like in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the plane ID. No, here we are in position number 1. Double click here on this grid view. The name is grid 3 here, actually. Here it was grid number 1. Here we are going to use the grid number 3. No more or less. So I'm going to actually read the grid view number 3. Grid view. Let's start from the beginner row. I'm going to say here pilot. Let's say pilot. Yes, pilot equals to grid view I'm going to say 3. Yes, here it is. But selected row. Selected row. Selected row. Yeah, that's it. Semicolon. That's it. Now I'm going to use this same pilot, to reach the position number 1. Pilot, I'm going to say, not pilot, I'm going to use the text box number. How much? This one. Text box number 2. Dot text equals pilot dot cells. Pilot, yes, dot cells, position number 1. Dot text. Simple. That's it. So that's it. Text box, we receive the pilot, this variable, at position number 1. The text of it. Let's save. Save this one also. Let's test now. So flight number 1, let's say, search. Here it is. Pilot ID. This is the pilot number 1. It has to be written here. Let me select. Here it is. It works very fine. Wonderful. Wonderful. Now when I search here, when I press search here, it has to show me the pilot details, which is the target of the question here. Which is the target of the question here. The pilot ID, the pilot details. Let's do that. Let's do that. Ticker is coming now. Okay. No worries. Let's do that. So when I click the search, we have to get details of the pilot somewhere here down a little bit. I'm going to drag and drop the pilot entity. This is the one, the pilot entity. I'm going to drag it and drop it here down. Yes, so I'm going to enable all the functionalities, whatever. Again, most important is selection because we need it if required for next. But this is the last step in our task now. I'm going to save. Yeah, and then after I'm going to make customization. Why? Because the value I'm going to get here, it would be inserted inside the session. So the pilot ID would be inserted in the session here. So double click. The value here is what? Text box 2. So here I'm going to say session. It's for the pilot ID. Yes, that equals text box 2 dot text dot to string. Yes, great. Finish. Pilot ID. This is the one I'm going to copy. Yes, I'm going to save first of all. Save. Come back here. The session we copied, we are going to use to display the details of the pilot in question. So here, configure the data source. Same configuration. It's the pilots. Yes, correct. Work clause. We're going to search by ID. I'm going to search by pilot ID. Pilot ID, yes. By pilot ID, this is the one we need. That has to be equal to a session, which is we just copied. Paste. Here it is. Pilot ID we copied, and this is the one at the table. Just add. Here it is. Perfect. It is the one we need. Just okay. Next. Test the query, see the results. Yes, the data type, they are perfect. I'm going to see the template architecture. Yes, that's the one we need, the pilot ID at the end. Yes, just finish. Save all, save everything, and let's test now. I'm going to search flight number 2, details. It's from Dubai to Muscat. When I select, we had this number here, which is the plane ID. If I search, the plane ID is from, it's this bus, this is the build date, and so on. And now I'm going to select the pilots available. Here is the number 2. The details of the pilot. The details of the pilot will be displayed here if I search. Yes, here it is. It is Fatma, pilot, date of birth, pilot ID. Perfect. Everything is running very fine. I'm going to give you this recording. I need the output at 2 today, at 2 sharp. If you